This is Commander Shepard. You're listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net, and this is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Hey guys, what's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net, and this is the show Botched Roll. I am your game master, dungeon master, guy who throws unusual scenarios at you, Mike the Birdman. And this is the show where we talk about role-playing games, tabletop RPGs, occasionally war minigames, and stuff in the role-playing game industry that I want you to think about to maybe bring a little bit of interest to your table with you, your friends, maybe frenemies, who knows. So this week we are preparing to go into Free RPG Day, and I've actually got a lot of really cool guests lined up this week. Later on this week, you're going to hear from Paul Alexander Butler, and he is one of the people who's one of the managing partners for Free RPG Day. You can look forward to that on Friday here on the show. But today, we're going to talk to some people that are actually producing something very cool, and have actually been doing this in the space for a little while now. But one of the things that they're going to be giving away during this Free RPG Day is something called the Story Engine, and they're giving you something that is known as the Free RPG Day Starter Deck. You might be wondering, well, what is the Story Engine? And this is something that I think I'd seen in a local store within the last year or so, and I kind of remember looking at the back of the packaging and thinking, okay, that looks kind of interesting. And what it is, it's a set of story prompts, but it's a lot more complicated and yet not at the same time. So I've got two of the big brains behind this thing. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Miroki Tong and Peter Chiykowski to the show. Guys, welcome to Botched Roll.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
guys, I am unbelievably excited to talk to you about this for several reasons. So Free RPG Day is like Dork Christmas, where we basically get to go to our local game stores. We get a chance to hang out with our friends, play D&D, Shadowrun, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire the Masquerade, Battletech, who knows, whatever. But it's a chance to meet other creatives in the kind of local scene. And as a guy myself who's been a longtime game master since about 1992, occasionally I get stumped, and occasionally my players will completely sidetrack what I have planned, whereas 3 pages of notes goes out the window and I get stuck, and I'm like, what am I going to do? So when I took a look at your product, the Story Engine, the starter deck comes with, I think, 60 cards, I want to say, if not more, in the starter thing. You guys are giving away unbelievable value right there. Can you guys explain to me, what is the Story Engine? Basically, what is the origin story of this?
I'm going to leave Peter to tell the origin story, but I think it's hilarious that you're talking about when your various players upend your best laid plans, because this is something we actually discussed and talked about, how the deck can really, really help with a situation like that, to the point where we created a short video. So if people follow us at Story Engine Deck, whether on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, you actually will literally see this scenario played out for you sometime later this week. But because Peter is truly the big brain, I really appreciate the flattery of being called the big brain, but I'm a different brains to the operation. I really want Peter to share the origin story with everyone.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about kind of where the Story Engine grew from, which was a combination of doing a lot of creative writing a lot of microfiction, so like very, very, very short stories, and trying to write stories, like 2 stories every week, which I was doing for a few years, back around like 2018, 2019. That plus doing a lot of writing for role-playing games. I was just thinking a lot about how mutable story is, how you can take elements and change them out and adapt them. And I think like something that's so cool that we take for granted about dungeon masters and game masters is like they have just a really agile way of telling stories, right? Like they can plan everything ahead, they can prep everything ahead, but they have to be ready to adapt to what happens in the moment. They got to respond to like the characters that the party gets really attached to. So it really, I think they have a very unique gift for thinking about story through like both the lens of a traditional storyteller and also a bit of improv. And Story Engine Deck was my way of looking at like, how do we break down the concept of a story into some understandable parts, and looking at the parts that are most important for a story to be really like good and juicy and compelling and interesting. And then how do we let people sort of think about stories or plan stories in a way that's both where there's a lot of like cool story theory, where every story that you make using these prompts is like interesting and satisfying and deep and does everything that makes a story good. But it's also really simple and intuitive and easy to learn because people are like very natural born storytellers. Storytelling is like a very deep tradition of almost every world culture, and like story and narrative are just one of the major lenses through which everyone sees the world. So like in some ways, what the deck does is it helps declutter the way that people can get like distracted or overwhelmed while thinking about story, and help them focus on like the core beats that are going to make a story really good. Who is the character? What do they want? What are going to be their conflicts or their barriers to facing it? And then what are a few other details that will make this feel real? So the deck is just really, it came from writing a lot of stories, doing a lot of role play, and trying to find a way to help people think of stories that like work through deep theory, but also like stories that slap, like stories that are bangers, stories that are really exciting and fun, and where like the motivations are things we connect to. And that turned into the Story Engine deck. It just really took off on crowdfunding. A community grew around it. Eventually, that community got so big that I wasn't sure how I was going to keep up with like the logistics of delivering this deck. And that's when Miroki came in and really helped turn the Story Engine from what was kind of like a hobby project of mine into something where we're sponsoring Free RPG Day, where we can like plan ahead and develop these really cool projects that put decks out into the gamer community. And actually, Miroki was the impetus behind our Free RPG Day partnership. We can talk a little bit about that.
Yes, 100%. I would love to hear how you guys got involved, because I know Free RPG Day has been running since I want to say 2003, and then a new ownership group took it over in 2019. And like I was saying, it's like Nerd Christmas, and it's where the local game store community can really start to focus on the RPG community, which we don't have a day that really celebrates us. Maybe Gary Gygax's birthday, I guess, but we don't have pre-launches for Magic or Pokemon drafts or whatever. There's nothing that says, hey, here's something new and exciting, and Free RPG Day is a chance for us to really focus in on what our community is like. So, Miroki, how did this partnership come together?
It's interesting that you mentioned Pokemon, because when you were talking about that, I was like, I guess there wasn't. And I think the closest thing we ever had to any sort of thing where we got free game product was, the rise of Pokemon, when Burger King had the Burger King toys, and everyone would fight, drag their parents to Burger King to try and I never ate Burger King in my life, and I don't think I ever have since then, but I got so much Burger King at that time just for the chance to own some of the products. And then they had those gathering nights on, I think it was like Tuesday or something, where people could play. But to Free RPG Day, so we were at Gen Con last summer, and it was the first time that the Story Engine really made our presence known kind of in an in-person gathering convention space. I know Peter had showcased the Story Engine deck and our other iteration, Deck of Worlds, previously, however, it was in a smaller capacity, just sort of like, I'm Peter Chiykowski, and I do the work I do with Rock, Paper, Cynic and his other company, Nat21, but the Story Engine was kind of a smaller part of it. And this last year was the one where we made a really dedicated effort to say, this is who we are. We're the Story Engine deck. We're here to help you play. We're here to stay. And we're actually going to be there this year as well. And we're actually participating in trade days. So it's the day before the main convention floor opens. So if you're a retailer or a librarian or work in the education system, it's an opportunity to kind of meet people who create games that are really good for your classrooms or for educational or for, working with youth. And then we also have a panel running on Friday morning as well, which as far as I know is sold out. However, I think there's still obviously an opportunity to get in. So I will straight up say they approached us. I will fully admit my ignorance in that I didn't know that there was a Free RPG Day. I was all around for Free Comic Book Day, but I didn't realize there was a Free RPG Day. And the founders came up to us, and they own a couple of them own comic shops of their own, or comic or gaming shops of their own, and they said, we purchased your game to put in our store. We loved it. We wanted a chance to come and meet and say hello to you in person, which is very flattering. We're such a small company. I know it sounds really grandiose, and that we've grown, that we had these massive Kickstarters, and that we've sold, I think, 15,000 plus decks all over the world at this point. We have players who, play literally, use our decks from the Philippines to Australia to China to Japan, for all of Europe. And it's incredible. It's so humbling. but we don't we're still so small. It's literally Peter, myself, and one other full-time person with the company, Eric, who's our community manager. So to have someone come up and say, we tried your decks, we love them. Would you be interested in participating in Free RPG Day? And they explained what the concept is, which you so eloquently described, Mike. And Peter and I, on one hand, we're so excited, and on the other hand, we're like, can we make this work? Like, is this something that we can actually do? Send like a starter sample of our deck all over the world for people to try out at their store, because it was such a cool opportunity. So we took it away, and we kind of did the boring thing of like lots of thinking, a lot of math, a lot of logistics, a lot of money and dollars and cents and bending the dollar and talking with our manufacturer to see whether it was something that could be possible within the timelines, and we went for it.
I gotta say, when I received my press package from the Free RPG Day people, by the way, thank you, Steve. I had one of the guys I play Dungeons and Dragons with come down, my friend Tristan, formerly of the Cambridge Chronicles podcast that I used to produce here on This Week in Geek. And one of the first things he actually gravitated towards was the Story Engine deck. And we opened it up together before we opened up. I think we opened up the dice bag and some other of the little small kind of physical goodies. But the Story Engine deck is what grabbed his attention, because he's starting to rediscover his creative license through him playing D&D with us recently. And he starts flipping through the story deck. And I remember him looking at me. We're sitting in my living room. He's like, Mike, this is really cool. Like, check this out. And he does like a spread on our table once we read the instructions about agents and anchor points and conflicts. And it's like, hey, check this out. And we're like, oh, dude. And we start kind of getting ideas and like kind of brainstorming. We're thinking this is going to lead us to so many cool adventures, because like I know our forever DM right now, we're going to take a break in just a couple of weeks, and I'm going to take over. As I've been exploring the story deck, I've been thinking, you know what? I could use this to generate a lot of interesting one-shots that can either have long-term consequences to our campaign or can just be that simple stories. And I love the simplicity of the Story Engine deck. And the fact that you guys have expansions. Can we talk about those for a minute? Because you guys have got some really cool ones I did not expect in there.
So many expansions. All the expansions. I think at this point for Story Engine deck, we have 6 expansions and 12 boosters. The expansions, our 3 starter ones are genre-based, so, fantasy, horror, sci-fi, and then we have 3 new expansions that we released when we released our second Deck of Worlds. And there's a totally shameless plug, Mike. I would say you should check out Deck of Worlds as well if you're a tabletop RPG player, because that's a lot of world building that you get to dig into in there. And then our 12 boosters get more granular. So if you have a horror expansion, we have an Eldritch horror booster, and I'm sure Peter can speak a lot more to how granular we get into the boosters if you folks are the type that really wants to get into the layered facets of what exists in these different genres and different different facets of fiction.
Yeah, Peter, please go into this, because like I said, this is really fascinating, because like, again, just looking on the surface, I could create Call of Cthulhu stuff with this. I could do stuff for Delta Green. I could do stuff for Achung Cthulhu, but not just that. When you mention fantasy, that's Pathfinder, D&D, Savage Worlds, any number of these huge IPs. But you guys have boiled it down into here are the fantasy elements that we can make something really interesting. So I'm curious to know how were all these expansions and booster packs developed? Because again, now it's almost like a collectible card game, but now I don't have to buy 12 of them to get all the kind of super awesome cards. I only have to buy 1 booster.
Yeah, exactly. The boosters are preset. We didn't want to have people, grinding away at packs to try and get the one card that they want. So everything's self-contained. You just need to get it once and you've got everything. And yeah, so for the first run of expansions and boosters, we did something that we do a lot, which is like listening to our community and getting feedback on like what are they working on, what are they interested in. So the first set of expansions and boosters were not quite voted on, but they were developed in sort of conversation in the comment section of the Kickstarter for that project in 2019. So fantasy was the one that people wanted right off the bat. We had so many tabletop gamers who were coming in and interested in that, and we actually partnered with the tabletop RPG Emberwind from Omnivore Games to license their art library for that deck. So in fact, so the fantasy expansion, the mythology booster, and the steampunk booster all feature artwork from Emberwind. Really, really beautiful pieces. They worked with a phenomenal studio and a phenomenal team for that. And I think you can really see like the love of RPGs, the love of the RPG art style really comes through in those decks. And then we sort of looked at where the gaps in our genre offerings were, and also at like genres that would be really interesting to be able to mix. Because you get a little guide booklet with every expansion that explains different ways that you can deploy it, whether you want to use it to make like a pure genre story where you're only drawing cards from this genre, or, and this is what my favorite thing to do, is to mix those cards in with the main deck or with other genres. Because you can get some really cool like genre cocktails, like a sci-fi Western or like a steampunk Western, right? Like think about how much Western is about kind of like outlaws and fighting the lawman and like bank heists, and think about how much that is also true of cyberpunk. Mixed together Western and cyberpunk, you've got like a really cool campaign concept there. So we wanted to look at both like genre as kind of the clothing that story wears, if that makes sense. You can have a story that like you see this a lot with Shakespeare. People like love reimagining Shakespeare in like gangland Chicago or on a space station. But with a lot of stories, you can find ways to transport the elements. But some elements of genre are still really central to theme, right? Like there are themes that feel really true to fantasy about like heroism and duty. There are themes that feel really relevant to sci-fi that would be hard to express in another genre about like innovation, technology as like both a savior and a destroyer. So we wanted to make sure that we had as many of the really core elements that like make this feel like a story that could only be told through a certain genre, as well as a lot of the really cool elements that you could mix and match with other genres. So yeah, the expansions are definitely like a love letter to genre mixing, genre blending, and also just like what makes genres on their own so cool and fun and compelling.
Now, one thing I really want to bring attention to is because you guys have opened up storytelling in a very accessible manner that literally almost anyone can pick this up and get it going in just a couple of minutes. You guys have developed a section on your website where it says you're donating these to community groups, to libraries, to all sorts of places. Please tell me how this project came together, because I was speaking with my wife off mic and she was like, that's really kind of incredible just to see something like this. Because I know there are groups right now, even kind of locally where we are recording in Guelph, Ontario, Canada, that have Dungeons and Dragons clubs. And I know a lot of people use D&D to teach storytelling, improvisation, theater kids, that sort of thing. But just the fact that you guys are focusing on giving out these decks to community groups, and there's an activity sheet, there's a lesson plan. How did that come together? And what's the response been like from the academic community?
So this was we've run this initiative, I believe, at least twice. We did it once during our Deck of Worlds Kickstarter, and we've done it now through Lore Masters deck, which are our third deck, which is set to come out later this year, and you can pre-order from a store at storyenginedeck.com/lore if anyone is interested. And I will say it's something that I think Peter and I are very, very passionate about. Like I know Peter has a story that he often shares about how it was, a teacher of his that really inspired him to pursue writing as a career. I grew up ESL, and if it wasn't for the various tutors and teachers that I had, I wouldn't have, first of all, had the solid grasp of the English language that I do now. But they also helped, me be able to fall in love with all the stories that were being told to me when I was young and foster my own creativity. And we wanted a chance to give back. And I say that this would not have been possible if it wasn't the support of our community. If we didn't have as equally a passionate community about the decks, about creativity as we did, we wouldn't have been able to make this happen. So both through the Kickstarter for Deck of Worlds and for the Backer Kit crowdfunding campaign of Lore Masters deck, we offered stretched stretch tiers that if we reach them, we would be able to donate, 10 decks to a school. I think that's what we set for each stretch tier. And thanks to the efforts of all of our backers, we will be donating 30 decks, possibly a little bit more, to serve communities of educators or libraries or community centers all around the world who demonstrate a need for a deck and just need a little bit more financial support, and maybe they can't necessarily afford a deck in their classroom or in their community space right now. So we opened the survey for that at the start of the spring. We have closed the survey since then for this latest release, and it's frankly overwhelming how many submissions we get every time. And if we had the chance to donate to every single entity, we really would. We do it on a lottery system to try and keep it as fair as possible. And for this particular initiative, the selected organizations will have a chance to pick from any of our 3 decks, so they can kind of pick the one that I think will suit their needs the best. Now, the other thing you mentioned is that we have lesson plans on our website. So we have lessons plans for the Story Engine deck, Deck of Worlds, and there will be ones for Lore Masters deck as well. Those will, as far as we're concerned, probably will remain free in perpetuum, because that's our way of supporting educators, and they can use those for the classroom. And Peter, if you want to speak a little bit more to the lessons plans, because I know you had a really strong hand in developing them.
Yeah, when the pandemic happened, I was thinking a lot about, because the Story Engine ran in 2019 and fulfilled in 2020, so sort of through the pandemic. And I was thinking a lot about when there was a very big Ontario teacher strike when I was a kid. And how parents were like really just doing their absolute best with what they had on hand to like keep kids learning when schools were closed. And I remember like going to my friend's house when we were lucky enough that like his mom was free during the day to run like lessons for us. And I remember that like at a time when life felt very uncertain and weird, it was very like comforting to have the routine, and it was also cool to keep learning. So I approached a curriculum developer friend of mine who I used to work with at a nonprofit, and asked if she would be able to help develop some lesson plans based on kind of those principles of story that went into the design of the deck. And this would help kids learn how to use, how to think about stories in really fun and interesting creative ways, how to write stories, and also as a way of getting them started with the deck. And we also made the deck available for free as a quarantine activity to like homeschoolers, teachers. And I actually checked the numbers while Miroki was sort of talking about the history of this. So we've given away 235 decks so far. In addition to, there's going to be the ones that we give away for Lore Masters deck. And we've given out 1,890 digital decks. So that was something that we were able to make available immediately during quarantine. Was we made a digital version of the deck available as like kind of like a free playtest download, so that people could use it at home for like homeschooling activities along with the lesson plans. So the lesson plans were designed to be like a really fun, active way for kids to learn storytelling. We've gotten so many amazing emails from educators who like brought the deck into the classroom. Students who like felt nervous about writing or weren't very interested in writing are now like rioting when the lessons are over because they want to keep writing, or like they want the deck back. They want the deck back. And I love it. It's very exciting to hear that like it gets kids excited about writing. It gets them wanting to write in their spare time, right? Like it stops being an assignment and it starts being something where like, and I think that feeling that you were describing when you had first opened the deck and you were like, it's almost hard not to brainstorm. Like when you start putting the cards together, your brain just gets excited about story in a very natural way. Like it gets excited about like, how do I connect these cards into like a really cool narrative? And so kids have that experience. That's really cool. The lesson plan helps facilitate that and make it easy to get going. And we've now done lesson plans for Story Engine and for Deck of Worlds, along with some, we partnered with the Video Game Clubs USA to develop some castle education guides for basically like experiential classroom learning through the deck. Just more ways to basically bring the deck to life for learning like social, emotional skills in like a classroom space or an extracurricular space. So those partnerships have been super duper rewarding. I've learned a lot through them about like the educational applications of the deck, which is something that I was already really excited about. And Miroki actually was one who helped us partner with Video Game Club USA, and has helped kind of, I guess, expand our ability to give these resources to educators. And that's just super cool.
Yeah, like it's one of the products that from free RPG day, like I said, being exposed to it, really got me enthusiastic again about the hobby. Like I've been freelancing as an RPG writer for just about a year now, and I'm looking at this thinking this could really kick off a whole new realm of experience for me to really enrich my sort of writing. And just the fact that, with my wife being a teacher, this kind of gives me ideas for her saying, hey, if you get the right classroom, this could be an awful lot of fun. And she's like, you know what? You're probably right. Because she's a very creative person as well. And, like you said, it's hard to not brainstorm with like this stuff and come up with some wacky ideas. And honestly, I know there's that thing that happens every November where it's like write a novel in 30 days. I think it might be kind of a fun challenge. Like, here's your prompt from the story deck. Doesn't matter what it is. You got 30 days. Go. So it's really exciting. So Peter Miroki, this has been a wonderful experience. So if people wanted to find more about the story deck and to get their own copy, where would they have to go?
They can always check us out on our website, storyenginedeck.com. And on our website, like I said, you'll not only find all our decks, Story Engine deck, Deck of Worlds, and Lore Masters deck. You can also find, we have a very active blog. We get guest writers on our blog. If you're looking at, resources to either look at, things like solo RPGing, how to get creative, overcoming writer's block, our blog is very, very active. You can find us at Story Engine Deck on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and we have lots of resources on our YouTube. If you're also we have tutorials on it. We are actually running a YouTube and Facebook Live. We're running a live stream this Saturday for Free RPG Day as part of our giant celebration. It's starting at 1 p.m. Eastern time. So if anyone wants to tune in, I believe Peter and Eric and various members are going to be literally developing a campaign from scratch and then playing it just to show you how effective the deck is. And if you're caught a little unawares at what to do on your role playing date night. So lots of cool things coming down the pipeline. So please follow us. Please check out our website. Drop us a line at any point. It is just us who manage all the inboxes. So we always want to hear from everybody.
And guys, like I said, please go check these guys out. So Peter Miroki, it has been an absolute pleasure. Please hold the line for just a moment. Guys, you really need to check this out. So Free RPG Day is this Saturday, June 22nd. Please go to your local game stores. They're going to be giving out all sorts of free things. There's going to be dice bags, dice trays, minis. But keep an eye out for this Story Engine deck. It is tremendously cool. It is very affordable. If you go to their website, they do offer free shipping over a certain dollar amount. Most certainly worth it. Hopefully we're going to get a chance to review more of their product as time goes on here on This Week in Geek and on Botched in the future. So guys, that's going to do it for me for this edition of the show. Stay tuned later in the week as we prepare for Free RPG Day. We're going to be talking with Paul Alexander Butler, and he is one of the people behind Free RPG Day and also runs games and stuff online, one of the largest stores on the East Coast for RPG Day, and it's going to be a fun conversation, and we even talk a little bit about Shadowrun. So look forward for that here on the site this week. So until next time, guys, I have been your game master, story master, whatever you want to call me. I've been Mike the Birdman saying be excellent to each other, and may all your roles be critical successes. We'll catch you guys again next time, right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.